Written and directed by Christopher Nolan, Inception is remembered for its captivating and unique storyline. Yet, it actually carries far deeper meanings than one might initially think. In today's video, we will discuss the subtext of Inception and explore its connection to the concept of manufacture of consent, which plays a significant role in our lives. So let's get to it. The concept of manufacture of consent was first mentioned by Walter Lippmann in his 1922 work Public Opinion. Lippmann argues that large masses of people do not possess the capacity to adequately evaluate social and political matters. Therefore, he claims that public opinion must be directed and shaped. This approach takes concrete form in the public relations strategies developed by Edward Bernays, who combined Freud's psychoanalytic theories with propaganda techniques. Freud's view that humans are not rational beings provides a theoretical foundation for Bernays' understanding of mass manipulation. Thus, the unconscious desires of the individual are manipulated in ways that serve the interests of those in power. Lippmann and his intellectual contemporaries, influenced by Freud, concluded that humans are inherently rational beings. They argued that this inherent rationality poses a fundamental threat to the functioning of democratic societies. Democracies, by definition, require the participation of the public in governance. However, governance necessitates rational deliberation, not emotional impulse. Therefore, they believe that the influence of the public should be minimized, and governance should be trusted to a rational elite. Yet, this approach encounters an obstacle. Democratic societies are partially enlightened. Their citizens can no longer be governed solely through coercion. This led states to seek alternative mechanisms of control, resulting in what has been called the manufacture of consent. Rather than relying on divine justification for political legitimacy, modern systems turn to human rationality, framing democracy as the people's will. Elections allow leaders to come to power through public support, thereby legitimizing authority. However, this model contains a significant flaw. The naive believe that we elect our leaders purely by our own volition, uninfluenced by external forces. Because in actuality, we can only choose between candidates that we are presented. And generally, those candidates are already wealthy people. But even their wealth isn't enough to cover the expenses of their election campaigns. Literally, billions are spent on election campaigns, and this money is not coming out of your pocket. So you're not really freely choosing anybody to govern your country. You're being influenced by the posters, the commercials, etc. And the money for all those things are coming from the capital owning groups, thus putting them in a position where they can even influence the process of lawmaking. And in case if you didn't know, the most important aspect of democracy is the laws are made by the Senate through the will of the public, not by the will of the people who happens to have more money than the others. In this context, consent is not freely given approval, but rather the result of a systematic process of production. And, as you can probably guess, the media is the most powerful tools in this process. Let me give you an example from Walter Lippmann's book, Public Opinion. There is an island in the ocean where, in 1914, a few Englishmen, Frenchmen, and Germans lived. No cable reaches that island, and the British mail steamer comes but once in 60 days. In September, it had not yet come, and the islanders were still talking about the latest newspaper which told about the approaching trial of
Madame Caillou
for the shooting of
Gaston Calmette.
It was, therefore, with more than usual eagerness that the whole colony assembled at the quay on a day in mid-September to hear from the captain what the verdict had been. They learned that for over 6 weeks now, those of them who were English and those of them who were French had been fighting in behalf of the sanctity of treaties against those of them who were Germans. For 6 strange weeks, they had acted as if they were friends, when in fact they were enemies. As you can see, had these people haven't seen the article on the newsletter, they were just gonna be friends. That is how powerful the media is. You can turn your friend into your enemy when there is no reason whatsoever. In conclusion, the manufacture of consent is not just a technique of manipulation, but the fundamental mode of operation of modern society. The relationship between media, ideology, and political power is both the producer and sustainer of this mechanism. Within this equation, the notion of the free individual must either be redefined or critically re-examined.
Hey, Turner. How do you know they'll print it?
But the manufacture of consent is not confined to the realm of politics. In fact, if you ask me, its origins is not fundamentally political at all. Although today it is often employed and examined within social context, the manufacture of consent is, at its core, a manifestation of an artistic attitude toward the world. Let me explain.
Kind of fish.
According to Plato, art is the reflection of ideas through phenomena. For him, the true reality resides in the world of ideas. Everything we perceive in the material world is merely a shadow or reflection of those ideal forms. Human beings can access this ideal only through reason. In that sense, one might say that art is the expression of truths attained through reason, presented by utilizing the surrounding phenomena. What is actually being emphasized here is that for something to be considered art, it must contain a subtext. So what is subtext? Subtext refers to the underlying meaning beneath the apparent narrative. That is to say, for example, a film we watch may contain far more meaning than its explicitly understood plot. This is achieved through the inclusion of representational elements within the film's content. Examples of such elements might include a recurring motive, the use of a specific set, an object, or even camera angles. When combined, these produce something much richer than merely A killed B. However, it should be remembered that subtext is not always used to deliver a profound message. It can be employed simply to enhance your meaning, or, as is often the case, to persuade the audience of the validity of the argument being presented. We will explain this more clearly in a moment. One might ask, what is the purpose of subtext? If you intend to convey a message, why not articulate it directly? Why embed your idea within a seemingly unrelated narrative and present it to the audience in disguise? Wouldn't it be more effective to simply state your point? After all, we would understand it. To grasp the reasoning behind this method, we must turn to the Sophists. The Sophists were itinerant philosophers of the 5th century BCE, who thought philosophy in exchange for payment.
Mercy, you don't got my money. You don't got my fucking money. Huh? Jimmy, he's gonna pay. Fucking kid, you can pay some money.
According to them, there is no objective truth or absolute reality. What matters is not the truth itself, but the ability to defend one's claim in a coherent and persuasive manner. In their view, everyone can defend any claim in a consistent and persuasive manner. Thus, the Sophists placed their faith in rhetoric. If you can articulate your ideas eloquently, your chances of being perceived as right increase. Unfortunately, this reflects a fundamental reality of the world we inhabit. Expressing something indirectly through allegory, metaphor, or narrative can be more persuasive than stating it plainly.
Would you please just stop being so fucking pleasant? I'm sorry, but not everything needs to sound so goddamn clever or charming or likable all the time. Sometimes we need to just be able to say things to one another. We need to hear things. I mean, my God, how do we even talk to each other? What have we done to ourselves? How do we fix it?
When someone reads an article, they are consciously aware that they are engaging with an author's ideas. Their mind is prepared for this. And, as a result, they often adopt a defensive stance, critically evaluating and opposing the views that are presented. After all, they recognize these as the author's subjective positions. Let me give you an example.
Inception. Is it possible?
Of course not.
If you can steal an idea from someone's mind, why can't you plant one there instead?
Okay, here's me planting an idea in your head. I say to you, don't think about elephants. What are you thinking about?
elephants.
Right, but it's not your idea because you know I gave it to you. The subject's mind can always trace the genesis of the idea. True inspiration's impossible to fake.
It's not true.
However, when someone watches a film or reads a novel, they're often unaware that an idea is being subtly imposed upon them, much like Fisher in the movie. This was not always the case. During the Romantic period, authors made their presence explicit. Readers were conscious that they were seeing a character through the author's eyes. The narrator might even interject with statements like, "This man is a wicked person," to direct you into what they want you to think. In Inception, for example, they don't just put his father in front of him in the first layer and make him tell his son that he should destroy his company. Instead, they make Fisher come to that conclusion by himself. Later, this narrative approach was largely abandoned. The contemporary mantra, "show, don't tell," stems from this shift. It is rooted in the idea of concealment. The most effective way to impose an idea on an audience is to make them believe the idea originated from themselves. This is why you don't tell, you show. Instead of stating, "the man was exhausted," you might say, "he was drenched in sweat and struggled to walk." This rhetorical sleight of hand leads the reader to infer the characters' exhaustion on their own, and to believe somewhat naively that this interpretation was their own insight, even though the notion that the man is tired is precisely what the author wishes to convey. The author deliberately avoids stating it outright. Instead, the audience is led on a journey, and this journey must not be too direct. A straightforward path would be tedious because the reader wants to feel that they've arrived at the destination through their own intellectual effort.
An idea. Resilient, highly contagious. Once an idea has taken hold of the brain, it's almost impossible to eradicate. An idea that is fully formed, fully understood, that sticks.
A person who believes that they reached the conclusion independently will embrace it more readily. Like a child solving a puzzle, they experience a sense of joy in the solution of discovery. Why this is the case?
Is that the audience actually wants to work for their meal. They just don't want to know that they're doing that. That's your job as a storyteller, is to hide the fact that you're making them work for their meal. We're born problem solvers. We're compelled to deduce and to deduct.
In my view, Inception encapsulates all of the themes we've discussed thus far. In fact, it goes beyond merely addressing them. It becomes a living embodiment of the very principle it critiques. It's a film about subtext created through subtext. In other words, it is a film about film, art within art. The structure of Cobb's team closely resembles that of a film production crew. Sato acts as the producer. He oversees the operation, ensuring everything proceeds as planned. Eames is the actor, shifting roles as needed. Ariadne serves as the set designer. Arthur is the screenwriter, and Cobb, he is the director. But most crucially, there is Fisher, who represents us, the audience, the public. The entire operation is designed to convince Fisher to adopt a specific idea. The team orchestrates an elaborate journey, manipulating his psyche until he accepts this idea as his own. At one point, Fisher is made to perceive his own subconscious as the enemy. He is rendered vulnerable, defenseless, driven by fear and confusion. He clings to the first source of comfort he finds, much like societies do in the wake of crisis. Fisher too follows the path laid out for him without resistance.
Must have blown you off. That is, unless her phone number really is only 6 digits. Funny way to make friends, someone stealing your wallet like that.
Who or what is Mr. Charles?
It's a gambit designed to turn Fisher against his own subconscious.
And why don't you approve?
Because it involves telling the Mark that he's dreaming, which involves attracting a lot of attention to us.
Who did you say you were?
I am here to protect you. Accept the fact that you're in a dream, and I'm here to protect you.
In the second dream layer, Fisher is once again told he's being pursued by the enemy. whilst the people that were pursuing him was actually his own conscience. Ultimately, he's led to open the safe. Within it lies his father, who tells him he was disappointed because Fisher tried to emulate him. In that moment, a lifetime of internal motivation is appended. Fisher believes he has reached a deeply personal realization. In reality, that realization was carefully implanted. His consent, his new worldview is manufactured, and so is ours. Consider an example like Ocean's 11. The protagonists are thieves stealing large sums of money, engaging in acts society universally condemns. Yet, because the thieves are played by Brad Pitt, George Clooney, Matt Damon, etc., and the target is someone like Andy Garcia, we cheer for the criminals.
You always play the bad guy on these shows.
Yeah.
So, and they have a fight scene at the end of it.
Well, not Land of the Giants or FBI, but the rest, yeah.
And you lose in the fight.
Yeah, of course. I'm the heavy.
Oh, that's an old trick pulled by the networks. Now you take Bingo Martin, for example. So you got a new guy like Scott Brown. You want to build up his bona fides. So you hire a guy from a canceled show to play the heavy. Then at the end of the show, when they fight, it's hero besting heavy. But what the audience sees is Bingo Martin whipping Jake Cahill's ass.
Whilst our conscience is telling us not to root for Oceans, we just cannot stop ourselves from doing it. Our consent is manufactured through charisma, style, and narrative framing. Inception reveals this entire architecture, but it does so with such finesse, it outperforms the sophists. The brilliance of Inception lies in the fact that it doesn't merely explain its message, it enacts it. Just as its characters create dreams within dreams, the film itself becomes a story within a story, art that critiques the mechanisms of art. It is a sophisticated metaphor for the world we inhabit, one that shows us how our desires, fears, and ultimately our consent are carefully shaped by those who control the narrative.
Asshole.